Agencies have mostly transitioned to mostly digital records, yet they still have plenty of paperwork. Some have turned to technology for converting paper into machine-readable data. For more, Federal News Network's Eric White spoke with Hyperscience Chief Technology Officer Brian Weiss.
We're in a really interesting inflection point right now because all of the legacy technologies that have done what technologies always try and do, which is understand noisy human information, right? It's the interface between machines and people. And no more evidence about the difficulty of that problem, which is like try and make a machine understand handwriting. Like our brains are very good at visually understanding like quickly what we're looking at and what it means. But getting a machine to do that is actually very, very difficult. Now, historically, the way companies have technology has gone about this is just a rules-based approach. So every time you see something, I try and write a rule for what I'm going to see. And if it matches my rule, then I can transform that messy information into something digital. And where we are now and what Hyperscience really is driving is a revolution in using what we call AI these days, but really it's machine deep learning to train models to understand similar to what people do over time, because you're showing them repetition of the variety. They learn to understand the variance. So, if you look at a box of paper, you think it's very simple to just scan that stuff and understand it. But think about how hard it is to understand handwriting, okay? A machine to understand how you would have to say, here's every single variant of the way. So the only way to deal with the complexity is using an underlying model that learns over time. You show it lots of examples and you train it. And that's really what Hyperscience has done. Like we're a roughly 8-year-old company. And the first 4 years of that were all about building a harnessing framework to understand information the same way humans do, but to do it in a way where the data you're using and the information you're touching is highly secure. So we cut our teeth, like I say, on back office automation and building models for the financial services industry. That data is so incredibly secure, and then also governments. So organizations like the VA, where we process actually 1 billion pieces of documents these days, and it's every claim going through the VA for our veterans. That data has to live inside the environment. Like you can't hand it off to a GPT model or a third party. So what Hyperscience has done is kind of crack that code for how to enable very high performing recognition of information like people, and we get human level accuracy out of the system these ways with Hyperscience. What that means, just to put it in pure numbers, the legacy technologies approach to this usually cap out at about 60% correctness accuracy. So if that's the case, what happens to the other 40? Right? And right now, what happens is it goes to people. Like somebody has to sit down and pick up the form and pick up a screen and key it in of what they're seeing and then make it translatable to the machine. So 40% of that workload is going to people. It is really a ripe opportunity for a technology transition. At Hyperscience, look, we're bringing almost a 99% accuracy rate because the models are getting smarter. So the more they see, the better they get. And so the efficiency gains are monstrous in this, and it really is a technology revolution. It's not incremental at all. It's apples and airplanes. It's not apples and oranges. And so the benefits are really huge. And Hyperscience is, it's not overnight. We've been doing this for 8+ years, and so we've very much sort of cracked that code internally for how to drive that efficiency.
If you could just kind of explain to me, how does this work? Going back, I remember the scannable documents tools where, you insert a piece of paper into what, was either a scanner or even sometimes just a bar that you send it through. What are we talking about here in terms of hardware and technology, and what is it that exactly this is capable of doing?
Yeah, so look, the back-end infrastructure, we're taking digitized documents, whether they're scans or, they're digital native, could be. And so the infrastructure really, what it does is it's a platform on which we harness models, right? Machine models that have been trained to do what people do. And the first part of that is what we call computer vision code. So all of the noisiness and the lines on a scan, and people spill coffee on it and they fold it in half, and all of that stuff where it's skewed sideways. Our models that we built for 10+ years correct for all of that. So we sort of take the noise out of all of that bit before you even ask the question of what am I looking at? And then we're essentially standing up models that answer the questions of what am I looking at? Is it the form XYZ? Is it 1040 or is it et cetera? And then once you figure that out, what kind of data do I need to get off the page? And these are learning models. So go find these 5 pieces of information. I'm not going to tell you where they are, Eric. I just need you to find them. Right. And by the way, I'm not going to even remotely show you where they might be. You need to go figure out, based on what you've seen up to date, where this data lives on a page. And then once you've done that, I need you to translate it into digital. And that means when I scribble my name and I write outside the box and I put the 0 when I run over it and I scratch it out and all, I need you to figure that out too. And so the underlying harness of that is we have training servers, right, in which you build the models to allow you to create this efficiency, and then a pipeline that is very efficient in harnessing the models in process. And we use CPU, not GPU, because it can be very expensive. So we're really proud of having effectively narrow-ish models. You hear about, 1 trillion parameters and things like that. Like, we're very focused on getting the job done. And then the other piece of innovation with Hyperscience is what we call just-in-time human-in-the-loop. So unlike the prior range of technologies that did this, if an OCR gets it wrong, your only option is to hand it off to somebody to do the whole form by themselves. What Hyperscience does uniquely is if the machine is a little bit not confident, right? So I've got 100 field, I'm trying to get data out of one, I've got one, but I'm not quite sure if I'm right. It'll raise its hand and say, hey, I need a little help. So at that point, just in time, for a tiny little piece of human intervention, I can now get that entire document through. It just takes me right to the thing and says, help me figure this one out. So that concept of just-in-time human in the loop, in order to help models do their work, it's kind of like a digital worker, right?
That's why I was going to ask. With your agency customers, what is their usual desire, and what is it they're exactly more worried about? Is it workload or accuracy?
It's a great question. There is an inverse relationship between I care about accuracy a lot, and and it's actually a tunable setting in our platform. You can say I care a lot about accuracy. And by the way, if you're going to use this data to train other models, it's critical. So at that point, the digital worker will raise its hand more often because it's not allowed to push this thing through without a very high confidence level. So you sort of set that confidence level. So customers will then, and what you're trading off then is you'll have to touch a few more documents, right, more often to get the machine to make its threshold. But at the same time, they're striking that balance between what's automated without its raising its hand and the accuracy. And we see accuracy rates of 99% and automation levels of 98%. Now, that's in a world where 60% used to be considered good.
Brian Weiss, Chief Technology Officer at Hyperscience. Find this interview at federalnewsnetwork.com/Federal Drive and subscribe to the Federal Drive wherever you get your podcasts.